Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of What Do You Call It podcast. I'm your host, GB. Today's guest is a pro wrestler, an actor, a bodybuilder. Please give it up for GREYWOLF RAVENTHORNE. How you doing today, sir? You okay?
Greetings. How are you? It's good to be on today. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Just had a busy day at work, but I get to spend the evening talking to you, so I'm looking forward to it. It did take a while to make this interview happen, as we had it arranged for the end of last year, but unfortunately I couldn't do it due to illness. But I'm glad to have you on the show finally. And one of the reasons that I wanted you on the show was after listening to you on It's My Wrestling podcast. I'm good friends with him. He spoke very high of you, and the interview itself was brilliant.
Indeed, much appreciated, and it's a great pleasure of mine to have done that as well. So cheers out to everyone who might have listened to that one as well, and I'm much honored to be on this one today.
Thank you, sir. So before we discuss wrestling, I just want to touch on you being an actor. As I mentioned in the intro, I know you've done a few films. It's listed on your filmography on IMDb. Do you have any more films coming out?
Right now, no. With the pandemic had hit, I'd had to take a hiatus from any sort of performing really in the ring or elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And as of right now, I don't have any film work scheduled, and that's on the horizon. That's sort of long-term goals. Right now, I'm mainly focused on rebuilding my wrestling career, reestablishing myself in that facet. And then from there, using that as a launch point to do other projects, which would definitely include film. That's one of my long-term goals, because I like to set up goals. I'm not sure if I'd covered this in the previous interview, but I like to set up goals in a sort of varying array. What I like to do is I like to set long-term grandiose goals. That this is my ultimate where I want to be. And then I always like to set intermediary goals, which are the sort of in-between points. And then I like to set short-term goals, because I'd like to compare it to a bowl of rice. You know, everyone you're hungry, you want that bowl of rice. So you take one grain, you add a grain, and add another grain, another grain. One grain after one grain eventually adds up to a teaspoon and then a tablespoon. And then eventually, once you complete adding all of those grains right on top of you, you have that bowl. So what I like to do is I like to set small goals and intermediary goals and long-term goals, because once you accomplish the smaller goals, you'll hit the intermediary goals. And once you've collectively applied those, then you've hit the long-term goal you've had set for yourself. So sort of that's more intermediary long-term goals. I'd like to get back into film and into speaking roles and such. And I would love to do, I'm not sure if I'd put it out there on a podcast before that. I would love to have, a speaking role in a war epic, something, Lord of the Rings or a Braveheart sort of thing. That's the sort of ultimate goal of mine, is I'd like to portray that sort of character on film with the speaking role. So I would like to, that's my trajectory. And I sort of focus on the smaller things leading up to that moment.
That's cool, man. I mean, I hope it happens. And also, big shout out to Braveheart. I've actually got Freedom tattooed on my arm, so I'm glad that's a film that you've just mentioned. What actually got you into acting in the first place?
I've always had sort of an affinity for performing arts. Even when I was doing bodybuilding, my performances on stage were a little more theatrical, a little more to engage the crowd, a little less, what do you think of it as conventional? And I've always been artistically inclined, and I believe that's just another outlet for creative expression is film, and it seems to be a popular one. I can't remember what I've mentioned on what podcast, because I've done so many, so my apologies, but I'm not sure if I got something other than how I actually I studied art originally when I was in college.
Nice.
That was my field of major, was actually specifically Renaissance painting and sculpture. However, that I don't want to say it's a dead form in the sort of modern sense. Nobody's commissioning another David right now. The most recognized artists are performing artists or singing artists, or the ones who are sort of projected forth via mass media. So that's something I could really sink my teeth into, I guess you could say, artistically, is something like that, and express myself through that media as well, is something like that. So I've always sort of had that inclination towards that. In a practical way, what ended up getting me through it was just networking through people I knew through wrestling. I remember the first acting I really did for any sort of screen was I had a friend who was working on a project several years ago called Brotherhood of Silver. It was a television show, a local television show. They had paid to have their product put on the air, and they had overwhelmingly annihilated some sort of Nielsen rating record that previously existed. So it did very, very well. And then they were seeking to go national with the project. So, and he had just put a word out there that he needed actors. So I said, well, I haven't really acting experience outside of wrestling, but this is something I wish to do. So I reached out to him, and he networked me with the proper people, and I ended up working on that project for a little while. We ended up filming a few trailers. I'm not sure if they ever got picked up by television. I sort of fell out with the crew because we had worked on it, done several trailers over the course of a couple of years, and nothing really got picked up the way they wanted it to.
Yeah.
And again, I said, for personal reasons, I also had to take a hiatus from me sort of performing, and that included this project as well, which was my initial project that I'd done acting first.
Okay, no, that's fair. On the last question I have in terms of based on the films, because we will talk about wrestling, as it is mostly a wrestling show, I want to ask if you can pick one actor to play you in a movie based on your life, who'd you pick?
I don't even know. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I mean, I'd have to have somebody maybe that looked a little bit like me and had a bit of a physique. I think that'd be the most obvious and conspicuous way to go about it. I couldn't maybe a Vin Diesel type, perhaps, because he might resemble me. I've been told maybe I look a little like Vin Diesel, and I know he's an action person. I know there'd probably be a lot of action sequences. I know he has a good body, so maybe that would be a more distinct person to fit this particular mode. That would need to be me, because again, for anyone who follows my work, knows that I'm a very distinct individual, and I sort of really don't look like many other people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes you unique, though. Like, you have an awesome look, but it makes you, it stands out in a good way. Like, no one looks like you in wrestling that at the moment that I've seen.
Yeah, so that's very deliberately designed, also. But yes, probably I'd have to say maybe a Vin Diesel type. I'd maybe say a Dwayne Johnson, but he's the wrong ethnicity and about 6 inches taller than I am. So that'd be
That's cool, man. That's cool. Just before I jump onto the wrestling, just because how you speak, do you have any English in your family?
I have a very little bit of English on my mother's side.
Okay.
English, Icelandic, Germanic, so a little bit of Irish, just a little bit of hodgepodge of sort of different,
just mix
cultures.
of everything. That's cool, man. That's cool. So I want to ask. Now we're gonna have the wrestling talk. What made you a wrestling fan in the first place?
This is actually one of my favorite questions I love to answer, because many people just see, the pro wrestling on the television and then they're hooked. For me, that was a small part of it, but from a very early age, you're told about the grandiose tales, the gladiators fighting in the arenas, and then Heracles, conquering different gods and performing different quests, and you look at it, the greatest heroes throughout history, and the biggest, most spectacular, the meanest people squaring off against each other in epic combat. And when I first seen professional wrestling, this was sort of the culmination of everything. These people were larger than life. They weren't got added person you'd see walking down the street or walking into a grocery store. These were the heroes of old, competing on a grand stage in a ring in front of thousands and thousands of people. And I just connected with it instantly. And I felt like I could relate to everything, all the tales. I feel like it encompassed everything about them. This was the gladiatorial arena from ancient Rome. This was the jousts of medieval Europe, and modernized. Because if you look at those spectacles, it was the same thing. You had the greatest heroes of the time in ancient Rome fighting to the death in a gladiatorial arena on the ancient fields of battle. You had the combative tournaments and jousts where, the grandest knights of the most noble families in the most modern, expensive armor were fighting against each other, and it drew spectacle. And this is the modern equivalent of what I felt all of that was, and it was instantly wowed me, and I was instantly drawn in. And I could almost say for the moment, this is what I wanted to do. I just sort of knew. It sparked something in me, lit a fire, ignited a fire that burst into a flame. And it's what I wanted to do.
Did you have any favorites growing up?
Yes, of course. I was a fan of, I guess you could say it's the old school style now, of course. I was always a fan of the big muscle men, the big power guy. The bigger and stronger, the better. I love the Powers of Pain. I love the Road Warriors. A lot of people give me flack for it, but I love Hulk Hogan. You know, Hulk Hogan was another great favorite of mine coming up. $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. He was another. You know, Davey Boy Smith and Ravishing Rick Rude. The Ultimate Warrior to a degree. But that sort of anybody that sort of embodied that persona that was this big, strong, larger than life character. Those are really the ones I was drawn to. I really liked the muscle man. I really liked the strong guys. I feel like they were more spectacular. I feel like that you just something you didn't see every day. This is something you read out of a myth. You know, you see the ancient statues of ancient Greece and Rome, and they're carved and chiseled, and this is what they looked like. And these statues come to life. So I think I was always drawn to them.
No, I think you got good taste, to be honest. I love the golden era, and of all the talent you've mentioned, I think Powers of Pain, in my opinion, are really underrated.
Absolutely.
If I was to tweet that, I'd probably get shit on. Oh, but they didn't do technical moves. Like, that's not what wrestling's all about. Like,
and you know, by the same token, I get a lot of that today, and I think modern fans are so oversaturated and a little bit jaded with how much technically wrestlers are doing in a way. And I hear the term, and it frustrates me to no end, is the term work rate. Because it's not a wrestling term. This is never a term I heard a wrestler use. This is a fan term, and I don't even know what it's supposed to mean. Is it supposed to mean how fast you do the moves, or what moves are in your arsenal, or how fast you do them? It sort of almost puzzles me what this term applies to, because it's not about how many moves you can do, or what way you do them, or how fast you do them, or how many of them you do. It has never been about that. If you can, and you can incorporate it in the story where you can draw somebody in and fascinate that one, fantastic. That makes you that much more superb of a wrestler, even more. However, I feel like this is a reflection of what we see a lot in modern culture, especially through cinema and the purveyance of, you know, Michael Bay films becoming extremely popular. You know, if you watch a Michael Bay film, which I find great difficulty personally myself watching.
I don't blame you, by the way.
There's explosions every 2 seconds, and computer-generated images. Everyone's a ninja. You know, this person's grandfather's a ninja. The person's dog is a ninja. The 9-year-old girl down the street selling Girl Scout cookies. For some reason, she's backflipping off of a building, and she's a ninja too. Everyone's a ninja, and everything's exploding, and it's ridiculous.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
It's sensory overload, and I understand from an economic and marketing perspective of having to push that sort of product on television in order to engage an audience in an era where attention spans are very short.
Yeah,
it's sort of also byproduct of that. However, when I go back and I want to watch a movie, you have the old cowboy, and his lands have been stolen, and his woman's been killed, and he doesn't have anything left but maybe his dog by his side and his 6-shooter at his side. And finally, at high noon, along the main area of the corral, comes square with the villain who's done it all. Now, instead of explosions happening everywhere and blah, 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 no. What you have is the sun glaring in the sky. Maybe you see a little smoke coming off the boot from him kicking up dust. They look each other in the eye. They get ready for the one word, because they've already gone 20 paces away from each other. You see the fingers on the trigger shaking, ready in anticipation, knowing in that moment it's not just about the shot that's about to take place. No, not at all. Instead, it's all the villainy, all the hatred, all the pain, all the sorrow that has gone forth into making this one very moment where just one bullet is going to make the difference and culminate the story. And as the tension builds, suddenly you hear the words, draw! And as you do, bang, bang! The villain grasps his side, and he falls slowly to the ground. And in a puddle of his own blood, looks up and utters a few last words as he perishes quietly into the day. And a tear running down the cheek of the man who's just shot him represents the entirety of that pain, knowing that in this moment, he's vindicated. Now compare that to 1,000 Michael Bay explosions. What's more enthralling, you know? And this is how I
was hooked then, by the way. This is only audio, this episode, but I genuinely smiled and I was just kind of hooked then. So that was awesome. Sorry.
But what's more compelling, and this is my perspective, what's more compelling
Yeah.
is drawing someone in with that story, because now there's an emotional connection. Now there's humanity behind that. It's not just people, I could get a Gatling gun and we could spray the entire Wild West, and cactuses can blow up, and the Indians' teepees could be flying all over the place, and the buffalo are being slaughtered all over, and then for some reason everything's now on fire. And it's absolutely absurd and ridiculous. And there's no meaning to any of it once you've oversaturated and overdone something. And that's sort of my take on wrestling. And of course, these are two extreme examples on either end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And there's so much middle ground and so much gray and so many stories you can tell, but one next to the other, I know which one I'm drawn to. I'm a really big fan of the storytelling and emotional, psychological involvement, and everything put in its place is a matter of perfection. Much more so than just things for the sake of things.
Yeah. No, you are spot on. I think character work, storytelling, like, not saying it doesn't exist at the moment, but I do feel like it's not as important as opposed to the moves now in sort of modern wrestling, and which is a shame, really. But that's everyone's different, and times have changed. But I actually prefer watching old school wrestling. But when is it that you decided that you wanted to become a professional wrestler?
Again, relating back to what you asked me previously, I think instantly I sort of knew. I saw this is what I wanted. I saw it within the first 10 minutes. I think this is what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things. It's like when you're in love, and I was in love with the business almost immediately. So that, however, my journey towards it was a little bit divergent, I guess you could say, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I started, you mentioned also, I'm also was a competitive bodybuilder, not so much anymore. I live the bodybuilding sort of lifestyle where I maintain my physique and try to consume a certain amount of calories and train properly and do that sort of thing still, but not immersed in it like I was when I was competing. Of course, it's very, very serious competition, and
Yeah.
there's something 80-90% of your time and everything you do in your life goes towards that. So if I could relate that story, how that sort of came about was I had wanted to be a professional wrestler, and this was my goal. This was my objective. And I knew, especially in that time, well, professional wrestlers have to be big men. It's not like today where you have a lot more diverse body types. This is going back, early, late 80s, early 90s. Everybody if you look at the physique from then, you look at the physique from now, it's completely different.
Day and night. Yeah.
For the most part. We're not getting into the technicalities as to why or how. I'm not going to touch on that subject, but if you look from then and look now, they're different.
Yeah.
It's not like you would go into television, you'd see a Marco Stunts or there's some of the smaller guys that you see now, you didn't see it. So a prerequisite at the time for being a professional wrestler is that you're in some way a large individual. For the most part, yes, exceptions, of course. For the most part, you had to be a large individual. So from the moment I could, I began lifting weights. It was maybe 13 years old, and I bought really cheaply a pair of concrete weights, and I was lifting at home. I didn't had a clue what I was doing, none at all. All I know is if I wanted to be a professional wrestler, this is what I had to do.
Yeah.
So eventually, I went to a gym in New Jersey. It's an old gym. I was 17 years old, maybe. I went to the gym at Mansfield Gym in Trenton, New Jersey, which at the time, even the culture there was a little bit different, because now you see Planet Fitnesses and LA Fitnesses and Retro Fitnesses, and so you name sort of whatever chain fitness center you want, and you see them all over the place. And that day, you really didn't have that. It's not proliferated the way it is today. You couldn't just walk down the street and you had a fitness center. I remember when the first fitness center really came in our area, it was a novel sort of thing. You had your Gold's gyms. I remember the first gym that came was, I think, an LA Fitness in this area. But you had your Gold's gyms, out in California and dispersed throughout the country, but we didn't have anything in that area like that. So what you had was, when you went to a gym, you went to a gym. And it was exactly what you'd think it is. It's, the old tropes about, concrete walls and men dropping and slamming weights and everything. Half the things are broken. This was the gym I went to. And it was specifically a bodybuilder's gym. Now, as often said, what you surround yourself with, you eventually become. Having gone to the gym in the objective of becoming a professional wrestler, and making size gains because of that. I eventually got immersed into the culture of bodybuilding because the gym I was at was specifically a bodybuilding gym. I mean, we also had, at the time, a world-class powerlifting team that was traveling around setting world records everywhere. But we had national level bodybuilding competitors. One of the notable names would come out of Man's World's gym back in the late 80s, early 90s was Phil Hill, who had competed in the Mr. Olympia. Also, we had someone, Derek Whitset, his name was. He had won the Night of Champions, which is a big bodybuilding show in New York, I think, a year previously to when I had joined.
Yeah.
So he was still out of our place. And we had other national level competitors. I remember these two cousins, Paul and Cedric, who had competed at national NPC level. A person I've become friends with, Marvin Ward, he was another national level NPC competitor. He might have got his IFBB Pro card. And then a good friend of mine, Brian Miller, also was a national level competitor back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So we had really elite caliber athletes in this facility. So you sort, again, as I say, you sort of become what you surround yourself with. And sort of by accident, I began developing my physique, getting all the tips, implementing everything that they told me. And Joe Dodd, he was the person who owned the gym. Now, he was a golden age bodybuilder, even before the days of Arnold Schwarzenegger. He had actually competed against Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is the person that took me under his wing. Yes, and he had actually beaten Lou Ferrigno back in Lou Ferrigno's early career in a bodybuilding contest. So this is the person who sort of took me under his wing and conditioned me. And I took a lot of his advice, and so I started looking really good. And eventually people say, you should compete in bodybuilding. So just by chance, because of the lifestyle I was leading from the people I was around every day, happened to just get into bodybuilding. And that was sort of led me, from there I went into wrestling later on. But so that's how that sort of transition happened accidentally. I never said I wanted to be a bodybuilder, but I wanted to have a good physique. And bodybuilding just sort of happened by default.
Oh, wow. The fact that you trained by someone that actually beat Lou Ferrigno, the Hulk.
Yep. Yes, and if anyone wants to Google Joe Dodd, D-O-D-D is his last name. Google bodybuilding Joe Dodd, you'll be able to see the images of this magnificent, spectacular man who influenced me in so many ways, not just in the realm of physicality, but if you could think of everything that encompassed the virtue of the medieval knight, he was that. I've seen him lend his car to people he didn't even know, give money to people off the street he's never met, and these are just things charitably he did day in, day out. He sponsored the Special Olympics on many occasions, and just a wonderful, wonderful human being. And there's a lot of his personality I tried to incorporate into the person I wanted to be today.
Honestly, it sounds like you had an incredible coach. That's awesome. I'm definitely going to have a browse after this interview, and I hope the listeners, if they're not aware of him, will also check him out online. With your professional wrestling training, I want to ask, what were some of the biggest challenges that you found when it came to your training?
You say challenges?
Yeah. So did you have any sort of difficulties or anything that you may have struggled with, or anything that just took a while to learn when it became...
No, confessedly, I've never been the most athletic person. I've always been a performer, and that sort of always came second nature to me. I could, cut a promo without thinking. I mean, I was practiced, right? It came very natural. Being in front of a crowd and sort of connecting with a crowd, that came very naturally to me. Learning the moves came fairly natural to me. I'd say maybe a little average, above average. Actually learning how to do the moves. Executing the moves, however, some of them, I always struggled with athleticism. And that was probably my biggest downfall, was doing the more athletic things. Earlier in my career, I was a little bit lighter than I am now. Now I'm walking around a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, which impedes my athleticism a little much, though I've trained it and worked on it quite a bit. But I think the biggest challenges were the physical, athletic sort of challenges, getting up for things and jumping in certain ways. And that's always been my pitfall, and always been my struggle, is that facet of the business.
Yeah. Okay, cool. In terms of the wrestling itself, I noticed, I'm not going to mention them because I actually watched them last night, the Briscoe brothers, and I know that you have wrestled against them in Ring of Honor. I just want to ask, how was your experience being in Ring of Honor and wrestling against the Briscoe brothers?
Well, first let me touch on the Briscoe brothers themselves. I can't say enough good things about the Briscoe brothers. just inside and outside of the ring, on a personal level, two magnificent individuals. I remember, and this, I don't even think this is an anecdote I've related publicly before. When I first had my tryout for Ring of Honor, when I got accepted and I knew I was going to have to go do this, I couldn't sleep for a week going into the Ring of Honor camp tryout. It was a 2-day camp / tryout where you get in front of them and you do all sorts of things and drills and whatnot.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect. And I'd become friends with Jay Briscoe just over the years, working several events with him and talking with him, becoming friendly. And Mark too. Mark is a wonderful person. I remember Jay Briscoe spending, I think, a few days before the camp, 45 minutes on the telephone with me, just calming me down and saying, "This is what you'll do. You'll be fine. Just do what you do. They'll like what you do,"
Oh, wow.
and just sort of giving me confidence and telling me which direction, what they were looking for, sort of, and just basically soothing my nerves because I was extremely nervous about this opportunity. And I remember him just taking the time and doing that. And just if anyone knows them outside the ring, very intense individuals, but very, very wonderful, humble human beings on a personal level. Work professionally, one of the best tag teams, if not the best on the planet. I think this is a general consensus, though this isn't my opinion. Obviously, we're probably in the top 5 tag teams on the planet. They've accomplished more in Ring of Honor, and I believe they've gone to Japan, if I'm not mistaken. And now they're doing AEW. But and working with them, stiff and tight and snug, and just the way I like wrestling. That's the way I feel like wrestling should be. And I would work with them any day of the week. So working with them specifically, I can't say enough good things. They could have a good match with anyone. So the Briscoe brothers, fantastic working with them, and I really enjoyed my time with Ring of Honor. As I said, I believe this was 2013 or 14. I'd done the camp and the tryout, and I hadn't heard back from them for a while, but I'd accepted the invitation to begin training at their dojo. So dojo, luckily being only half an hour from where I was living at the time, I would go to there a couple times a month and train under Delirious was the head trainer at the time. You also had people like Will Ferrara, Cheeseburger was there, Rhett Titus, a few others I can't remember off the top of my head. Remember, we'd have people poke in here and there, but really it was mainly under the tutelage of Delirious, who, if he wasn't present, his style was being pushed as the prevalent style to learn there. So I spent a good duration at the Ring of Honor dojo, and eventually my partner who was loosely a partner of mine at the time, we really hadn't solidified too much, with Red Scorpion. We had worked a couple of different programs in different places, and they had the idea, because he also did a Ring of Honor camp, why don't we pair these two together, which we had been doing anyway, and bring us on television. So, and I loved being in the company, and I made so many good friendships, lasting friendships with many of the people there. And I feel it's sad, because of the hiatus and injury and other circumstances, I sort of became distant from them. Wish I hadn't.
Yeah.
It's just life, sometimes uncontrollable circumstance.
But at least your time was memorable. You speak positive on it, and obviously you just praised the Briscoe brothers, who I agree with you are probably in the top 5 tag teams in the world right now. In terms of promotions that you've worked with over the years, if you're able to name a few of your favourites or what have been some of your highlights, what promotions stand out to you that you really have enjoyed working for?
I have one. I'm coming up this Saturday. I'm working for 1CW, and when I first started branching out, because I originally trained at Monster Factory years ago.
Yeah.
And I played another place. I can't say enough good things, especially with what Danny Cage has done to take over. I could write an essay on how good he's done with the place. But I originally trained at the Monster Factory. Now, at the time, it was different than it is now. We were running out of a different location. There was different people running it, and there was a couple. Every week, we would run events. We'd have live events. Mainly for students to experience in front of a crowd and gain knowledge. Just perform. Sometimes there were 50 people. Most of the time, there was about 5 or 10 in attendance. So we were performing, but we were smaller crowds. However, we would often bring in people.
Yeah.
Now, we had a crew that come in from Delaware, though. They would come to wrestle with us, every so often. And they saw me and they're, oh, this person might fit well. So they brought me down in, one of the promotions in Delaware. And from there, another one of the promoters who had co-promoted down to Delaware, I know this is coming a tangent, I apologize. It was Sean Hardy, who was coming up to the new sort of promotion, you know, big, more spectacular one for the state of Delaware, where he really promotes hard and gets things on the radio and television, does as much as he can called 1CW, First State Championship Wrestling. And well, many people may not have heard of 1CW. It's been a promotion. I'm very close with Sean Hardy, the person who runs it, and he's been nothing but good to me over the I don't know how, it's been well over a decade we've known each other. Now, it's been, I'm in my 16th year of professional wrestling.
Oh, wow.
So I've probably known Sean Hardy maybe at least 13 of those years and 14 of those years. And throughout the entire time, and I've worked with him many, many times. Every time he's brought me in, I have nothing but good things to say. I love working with Sean. I love his company. So that's, you know, a good one. Monster Factory Pro Wrestling, after Danny Cage took over. When I had worked with them for a couple of years. Again, before I injured myself, I had an injury in 2017 that set me back tremendously.
Yeah.
But I'd been working with them steadily for several years, and it was fun. And you went down there, and Danny could be a hard-head, and he really could take charge and run things in a really strict way. But at the end of the day, everybody was very, very connected with each other. He had a very good crew down there, and some of the friendships that I established there, you know, those friendships are going to last a lifetime. So a lot of good memories there as well. And there's a lot of other ones. You know, I worked with some really small ones. Triple WA, I remember, it's a small promotion sort of out in the middle of Pennsylvania, and they would draw decent crowds at the flea market. But what I really recall about that is afterwards, myself and some of the other wrestlers always go out to eat. Those memories I cherish, because it wasn't necessarily working in front of the crowd and working the promotion, you know, sort of a promotion's a promotion sometimes.
Yeah.
However, after the camaraderie that I had after the event, we would all go out to dinner and sit at a restaurant and just tell stories, appreciate and enjoy each other's company. With some of the things I valued immensely from that experience as well. And there's many other ones, I'm sure. It's not
quite a lot to name.
These are the ones that are sitting right at the forefront of my mind.
I love that, man. Have you wrestled outside the US, by the way?
I have not yet. I'm looking to. We're hoping to. Every time something comes up, some sort of setback. There was one a few years back where I was supposed to be booked for a promotion in Japan, and it ended up being fake, and everything fell through, and the promoter fell off the face of the planet when it came time to do anything. And then we had something perhaps with another promotion set up down in Mexico, but things happen, things fold.
Yeah,
so that was a question. Another one up in Canada. I was supposed to go to Canada. Again, it's sort of, so every time I'm supposed to go to the country, it's sort of something happens. It is in the future.
Just no luck. That sucks, man.
well, fortune, I guess you can look at fortune in a couple of different ways. Maybe it was good luck. You know, who's to say we'll go down to Mexico or go to Japan, something bad happens? You know, you can't really look at it in that perspective, because luck is really when, you know, preparedness meets opportunity. And I think when that happens, it will happen, and it'll be the right time to accept it and carry forward with it. It's one of the things my tag team partner and I are working on now. We want to get our passports, and just to be sure that if the opportunity arises that we could go outside the country, then we'll be perfectly able.
Hopefully the UK is on one of your destinations. It'd be good to see you live, mate.
I would love to. I've said it many times. I have so many friends now, especially through Twitter. You know how active I can be on Twitter. Many friends out in the UK. A couple people I've become fairly close with that are trainees out in the UK, or are going to begin wrestling training very soon. And I've just been giving them words of encouragement. And I hope to be able to go out there. There's so many friends out there, you know, just from Twitter. Dayton, if you're listening, I know we've known each other for several years now, and it would be remarkable to meet you. Vicky, I know you're out there. I don't know if you're listening. She's a troublemaker from the UK. You know, these are some of the people that come immediately to mind, so I know from Twitter, who I'd like to meet in person. There's just so many. Therian, he goes by. You know, so many people out in the UK who I'd like to meet. Not then that list didn't, of course, include some of the people I've been helping and the newest students that are coming.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Just as you just mentioned about words of encouragement, if there is a listener out there that wants to get into wrestling, what advice would you give for anyone that wants to become a wrestler?
This is a very overarching, deep question, because I can't summarize it in just a paragraph or a sentence. I can say, oh, don't take it bad, bumps, brother, and that'll be the end of it. I don't really want to do that as a synopsis. However, if you're listening and you're listening, want to get into the professional wrestling business, it's going to be hard. Don't think it's going to be easy, because nothing worthwhile ever is. But if you put the effort in, you'll get back tenfold what you put into it, I promise. And be prepared to listen. Be prepared to be told things you don't like. Be prepared to stay with it for the long haul, because it's not going to happen overnight. You're not training for a sprint, you're training for a marathon. And in the end, if you really want it, I believe that if you put forth the effort and you do what your coach is saying, you listen to the right people, not just anyone. Listen, make sure the person you're listening to has the proper credentials and knows what they're talking about. And stay the course. Get your body right. Get your mind right. Because we're a fully functioning machine that functions not just on physicality, but where our mind goes, it sort of conjures everything else from thenceforth into existence. Our body can't be right without our mind. If you don't have the discipline to condition yourself to get your body proper, that's a mind problem. You got to condition your mind so you can discipline your body and then discipline yourself to do other things. So take care of yourself in all facets, physically, mentally, emotionally. Make sure it's all there, because if one crumbles, you have a foundation that's not going to be stable and it's not going to be solid. Find a good trainer. Find a reputable trainer. Find someone. I cannot emphasize that enough, because there's so many people out there have no business training people. Find a reputable trainer or a reputable training facility, and get there and listen. Keep your ears open. Keep your mouth shut. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Just do as you're told and put in the effort, and I promise you, you'll reap the rewards you've sown.
I love it. For anyone that has listened to what GREYWOLF has just said, like, the man is so knowledgeable. It's why I had him on the show, but just because I personally find it very interesting, but very engaging, and that's why I've really enjoyed speaking to you for the last 30-40 minutes or so. How often do you get praised for the way you speak, by the way? I love it. Like, I absolutely love it. I'm just going to ask this. It's sort of a random question, but I kind of want to know.
I don't often get the opportunity for a forum like this where I get to speak publicly. Usually I engage people, as you say, when I speak. I guess it's my cadence or whatever it happens to be, or the way I say things. But it's usually in short promo bursts that I'm doing any sort of promo work, so people know me a lot from there. If you've seen my reviews, I do.
Yeah, on your YouTube.
I'm almost doing a tongue-in-cheek parody of, a 1980s professional wrestler. It's part of what I do and part of who I am. It's half parody, half real.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to be yelling and I'm going to be doing things like this, it doesn't captivate someone as just having a regular conversation tonight with people. And sometimes I think that's what people miss about me. They see this over the top person, and it really is. People say, "Oh, what do you get?" Well, the gimmick really is myself. I just amplify myself and a little more obnoxious than I would be. I'm typically a little more reserved. I just crank up whatever's inside me, and whatever comes out, comes out. Robin Williams sort of did the same thing. You look at some of his improv performances, and he's all over the place. He's running around buildings, he's shouting, and this is just sort of what I do. This is what happens when I'm asked to do. So it's very seldom I actually get an opportunity to sit down and just sort of talk where it doesn't have to be a really good deal of performing, if that makes sense.
No, it does, man. And I really do appreciate you having, sitting down, taking time out of your, out of your life to speak to me. We spoke about wrestling, acting, getting into the business, the Briscoes, bodybuilding as well. I think it's been a really interesting chat. One last question I'm going to ask you, and that is, what is next for GREYWOLF Ravенthorne?
What is next for GREYWOLF Raventhorne? Many things on the horizon. As I said, long term, we've already discussed that. There's no reason to sort of have to recapitulate on that front. My tag team partner and I are really doubling down on wrestling this year. We're really trying to get more bookings, hopefully on a bigger platform than we've been. We've had the opportunity the past year to do things like Camp Leapfrog, which is absolutely spectacular thing that I've been a part of. It was sort of the spiritual successor, if you will, of Shikara. To have been a part of that was phenomenal. And we see so many people we've known from just all different places, being on AEW, being on Impact, being in Ring of Honor. And so I think the next step is I really need to re-solidify myself. And I told people before I put a post about this on Twitter, is that hold me accountable. I want to wrestle on television again, and I'm making the moves I believe, necessary in order to do that. So we'll see. We'll see where we end up. I want to say we'll be on television. That myself and my tag team partner have been working very hard. Warwolf Creed, if you're also not following him, follow him. I think True Warwolf is his Twitter handle if you want to follow him on Twitter. Also very worth following. He's put so much effort in, and I'm so proud of everything he's done. And he's just on a personal level become like a brother to me. You know, we talk many times, outside of the business, and he's become like family to me. We're looking to expand out in the short term. Hopefully, do some television work. That's our ultimate objective. Right now, we're currently holding the LTW Tag Team Championships. We're looking to explore more of that as they have a lot of dates coming up. As well as that, who else knows? I mean, this is big things can come. I just have to set the goals and execute them.
I hope you do execute them, man. I know you will. I know you will. But GREYWOLF, where can the listeners find you on social media?
On social media, the only one I have active at the moment is Twitter. But I'm highly active on Twitter, and if anyone engaged with me, I try my best to get to every comment. I try my best. I recently shut off my direct messages, just because I had such an influx of messages I couldn't keep up with it, and it was becoming overwhelming. However, I try to respond to everybody that engaged with me. It's if you look on Twitter at TLW_GREYWOLF. That's Twitter at TLW_GREYWOLF. You can find me there. Also, if you go on YouTube, I've been sporadically posting YouTube videos of silly things I sort of do. GREYWOLF Ravенthorne, if you look up GREYWOLF Ravенthorne on Twitter, you can find me there. Also, give a comment, get a like and a subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Any sort of engagement there is appreciated, as well as I'm going to be trying to build up my YouTube in the next year also.
Awesome, man. I do highly recommend following GREYWOLF on Twitter. It's good content, and he makes time for the fans as well. He will reply. That's how we've hooked up this interview, and the fact that I was able to rearrange it as well. I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know we're going to see you on TV this year. I forget it's 2022 sometimes. But for all the listeners out there that have listened to this episode, there is going to be more episodes of What You Call It podcast coming out at the end of this week. So keep an eye out for that. I will put the details of GREYWOLF in the description, where you can follow him on Twitter and subscribe to his YouTube. But for now, everyone, I hope you all have a good week and take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's time for What Do You Call It? Podcast.
Hello there. I've got a special announcement for my next guest.
What's up? I'm Izzy James, and you can see me on What Do You Call It podcast.
You heard.
What's going on, guys? It's Cole Bohannon here. Be sure to check me out on the What Do You Call It podcast. I'll be appearing very soon. You can find out what's next for Cole Bohannon, as well as who I'm going to be beating the shit out of.
The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at wrestlingwithjohners.com.